What my wife's done to me. I honestly never expected that I would find myself in this position in life. My wife pulled off the unthinkable. It was in 2014, a year after we started dating, when I uncovered a message thread on her phone in which she had swapped images. She told me that her phone had been hacked and that she needed help. I didn't believe it at first, but I persuaded myself that I did and continued. After having our first child together in 2016, we tied the knot in October of this year. In 2019, we will welcome a second kid and complete the purchase of a house. My life seemed to be going well at the time. It's monotonous and repetitious, but it's also fantastic. This year, I had a vasectomy. After a few weeks, I noticed a difference in my preferences in the bedroom. The two of us spoke about a few things before she showed me a text conversation she was having with one of my closest friends. It was obvious that several components were missing, so I inquired as to why, and she flatly refused to provide an explanation. Her text message history for the preceding 3 months was available to me, and I uncovered hundreds of messages between them. We had a 10-day squabble about it until I notified her that I wanted her erased conversations recovered by a professional data recovery company. After a brief denial, she admitted that she'd been with him for almost 4 months beginning immediately after I had the vasectomy. According to her, they had been exchanging photographs and phone talks, and he had encouraged her to acquire a wireless vibrator that he could use on her remotely through the internet. Later, when she saw I was still seeking to retrieve her mobile phone messages, she admitted to having relations with a former employee, which I discovered some days later. Earlier this year, she claimed to have carried out the act. 3 days later, she calls to tell me that there is more to the story. According to her, she didn't have with that employee this year, but rather in 2019, and that she only met up with him once for a haircut. I was shocked when she told me she'd been having with her best friend for an undetermined period of time. She has some memory problems from a medical condition. I believe she says it started before we were married, maybe even before our first kid. Additionally, she told me about another person she had brought into our home with the intention of having with 2 months prior, but had not followed through with. Later on, she told me that she had been with another of my friends, and she eventually admitted to with another of my friends in 2014. Her phone's data recovery attempt was unsuccessful. I dug through her Facebook chat history, Google location history, and other digital data to find out what she had been up to recently. I discovered that she was with another person, a female, who she had completely forgotten about. I'm concerned that there are other issues that she hasn't considered. I also came up a plethora of unsettling chronological facts, which I documented. At 36 weeks pregnant, she had with a colleague on the morning of my 30th birthday celebration, which was the day before my party. Around 10 days before our wedding, she recorded one of her most intimate talks with her best friend, and I unfortunately found it. That image will never leave my brain. We had another one just 5 weeks later, which was 5 weeks after our wedding. Just 6 weeks had passed after the couple had tied the knot when the BJ rendezvous took place. On one particular year's birthday, I shared a Wi-Fi vibrator with a friend, which was shortly followed by birthday greetings from both of them by SMS. I'm completely at a loss on what to do. For lack of a better option, we've sought help from a marriage therapist in an attempt to get beyond this. But it's so terrible that I'm scared it'll be impossible to overcome. Understand that there is a lot more to it than just leaving before you respond with such phrase. If it were still 2014, I'd agree. But there are children, marital assets, and 8 years of memories to take into consideration as well. Thank you for taking the time to read about my life. I appreciate your interest. Story 2. I must divorce my wife. She keeps cheating. I can forgive, but I cannot continue. We've been married for over 10 years. I'm in my early 30s without children. I was in school and doing horrible jobs for the most of the time, but this final year, I obtained a terrific position in a lovely town and we relocated. It was supposed to be the point in life when things began to improve. Actually, she had almost an affair with a man from her workplace before we left. She told me about it for some reason, how she was drawn to him, how he had his own company and so on. She had considered leaving me at one time. She was expecting a sign from God. Something wasn't right since she was being incredibly chilly to me. He wouldn't embrace or grin at me. That's when she informed me that God will tell her whether or not she should go with this other man. So this broke my heart since I believed our bond was unbreakable. At this moment, I needed her more than anything else, but she was aloof. So after about a week, which had been the worst week of my life up to that point. She came to me in tears and said something about God being extremely unkind or something, and she said she wanted to remain with me. It became evident to me at this time that she was simply making up theology as she went along. She is also bipolar. You may be wondering what all the God stuff is about. We're both Christians, but she goes a little crazy with it, and I simply try not to make any bad choices because of it. She's often asking me what God is doing or why he did something, and I attempt to explain that she doesn't really know for sure that God did the item in issue, that she's skipping logical stages and so on. So this is when I began to have reservations about us. When I saw she was willing to cheat, I questioned if I wanted to continue. I agreed to continue since she didn't cheat, but I had a poorer view of her after that. So I get this job, and we relocate. Nice flats, close to the beach. For a few months, everything is okay. Then this neighbor in his mid-40s moved in. I see she begins to spend a lot of time with him. Gifts begin to emerge in our flat. I sometimes visit his flat, but I don't like him. I'd gotten home from work to find her at his house, both of them stoned. I didn't have any strong suspicions at the time. I came over one day after a party they were having over there, which I had to miss since they were using marijuana, and I didn't want to fail a drug test, and found her nude and sleeping in his bed. I'm high on Xanax. She maintains she did nothing wrong. When she wakes up the following day, I panic out a bit and tell her I don't trust her anymore. Later, I read her journal, in which she openly confesses to having with him on several times. The worst day of my life has arrived. She confesses to having with him and this 19-year-old ghetto fool who sometimes hangs around there. I tell her I'm thinking of divorcing her, but haven't decided if I want to forgive her. Things return to normal, kind of, and I tell her she can't hang out with this man by herself anymore. She does it anyhow, and the same thing occurs again, and I discover her nude and sleeping in his bed under the same conditions. I panic once again and tell her she can't hang out with him. She still does, but then something strange occurs, and this man, also the 19-year-old, stops trusting her and stops communicating to her. They both accuse her of strange things that I'm quite sure she didn't do, but I'm not interested in clearing that up. So everything returns to normal. We meet new people, good ones that aren't bad. She claims she did those other things because she craves a lot of, which I can't provide 3 times a day. She creates an online dating profile and begins receiving many messages. She leaves her computer open, and I see she's made plans to meet with random internet people while I'll be out of the apartment. One of which is most likely occurring right now. One is scheduled at 7 p.m. today. She has no idea I know. She also claims in her chats on the dating site to have had with a lot more males than I previously knew about, some of whom she had intercourse with quite recently. As a result, I must divorce her. Obviously. As I write this, I can't believe I put up with it this long. I genuinely believed I was doing her a favor by giving her second opportunities. I understand what some of you are thinking. She'll ask for alimony. Actually, I doubt she will. She said that she does not and believes it is unjust. She is spontaneous rather than calculated. So I anticipate to be able to seek a divorce quickly. We live in Maryland, therefore we can't seek a no-fault divorce till we've lived here for a year, which we haven't. Otherwise, I'll need a witness to confirm the grounds for divorce. If it's permitted, I may be able to persuade her to do it. She may acknowledge it. In addition, I have her handwriting confessing what she did. I'm not sure whether it qualifies.